So today's topic, Brett, it's one that everybody's been blabbering about for some time. It's the whole promotion, relegation discussion in MLS. And I guess let's start with the very first question. Or actually, let me give you a chance to kind of update people on what happened with USL here just recently and what it means.
Well, apparently, New Rock has taken USL and has applied for a Division III league. Mm-hmm. Basically, they're trying to bypass all the rules and regulations that USSF is pushing on the Division II league,
right?
Where they need to be able to put up. They need to have an owner that has at least a $20 million backing, I guess you could say,
right.
They need to have a soccer-specific stadium, and USL is simply just, my guess is thinking that this is asking too much. So they're going to Division III, where it's going to be a little lax. They're taking all of their PDO. I don't know if they're taking the PDO, but they're taking all their USL 1 and USL 2 teams and forming a Division III team or league.
Wow.
At least that's what the last that I've heard has been that.
So does
and
that...
apparently, NASL has actually applied for Division II status.
Mm-hmm.
I counted that they are sure they will have 9 teams. They're supposed to have up to 8. They're supposed to have 8 teams to make a league.
Mm-hmm. Are we going to see a lot of the USL teams move into NASL? I mean, like the Rochester Rhinos and teams with a lot of history.
We most likely will see that as long as USSF okays the status.
Okay.
I think this is a smart play by New Rock to try to regain control of the NASL teams.
Okay.
So whether that happens, whether or not that backfires, that'll be left to be decided. But it's possible starting next season that we could have 3 independent divisions. You have MLS, which is owned and operated by MLS.
Mm-hmm. Division
NASL, which will be owned and operated by the individual teams that form the TOA, I think it's what it's called.
Okay.
And then USL, which is owned by New Rock, is going to be the Division III.
So you're saying it's a good move by USL because a lot of the Division II teams right now will follow them into Division III?
Assuming that only way that's going to happen is if NASL is denied a Division II status.
Why would they at this point? Because it seems to me they don't have any choice, but because now there won't be a Division II, right?
No, NASL has applied for Division II status. They have about 9 teams that they verified will be able to fulfill the USSF's expectations and demands.
Okay.
Still, it's up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
There are about 3 teams on the fringe of whether or not they will be able to do it. I know St. Louis is one of them. Mm-hmm. They might not have the financial means to operate as a Division II team.
So they would end up going with the USL down to Division III then.
Yes, assuming if they wanted to continue a team, yes.
So
that's what I would think, yeah.
So somehow the USL is dropping even lower down to Division III as a positive, and you're seeing that too.
They're trying to dismantle NASL basically, trying to regain control. This was a smart move to do so. Whether or not it works, all falls on USSF granting NASL Division II status. It could backfire, and they could just be classified as a Division III, and then they could lose their top teams who want to go to NASL. So
yeah, I mean, why would the Rhinos, for instance, Rochester Rhinos, want to play in Division III?
That's a good question. It depends on how long New Rock has them on contract still.
Yeah, I don't know. It sounds like a big disastrous mess, and then it really comes down to, Brett, that our soccer federation, unlike other federations in other countries, just has so little control, it seems to me, over what each of the divisions are doing independently from one another.
And you know what? And that's another way to look at it, is that this move could technically dismantle the lower divisions.
Mm-hmm.
It could just, leave them with no division to play in.
Yeah.
At which point, I would literally think that MLS would jump on that if they were dismantling, that they could just swoop in and grab handful of teams in certain markets, and basically call it MLS.2.
Yeah.
And then you use it as a reserve league, or as we're going to talk about in the future, you could possibly look at it as being a promotion relegation type thing.
Well, if it's a reserve league, what is the championship in essence? Really? Come on, let's face it.
Yep, that's pretty much it, yeah.
I mean, they're really, in the championship in England is, in many ways, it's a reserve league too, in this sense. Anybody that performs really well in the championship, they're gone. They're moving up. They're not minor league teams necessarily. Cardiff isn't a minor league team for some team in the English Premier League. But you know what? If one of their players plays really well and yet they don't get promoted, that player is, they're going to swoop him up. He's gone. He's going to be playing in the Premiership. So how different is it, really?
At the very least, the teams that are most likely going to be promoted next season will swoop up and pick them up.
You know what, Brett? I don't want to see the second division in the United States become like AAA baseball. Though.
I agree.
I don't like that. Where all the players in Division II have a contract, with a Division I team. To me, that sucks. That sniffs of something, like okay, in Spain and in Germany, they do this too, where you have, Bundesliga teams with, second teams that play in lower divisions. Well, that's fine, but it doesn't make up all of the lower divisions. So I think I would like to still see the predominant amount of Division II teams in the United States be independent teams, like the Rochester Rhinos, like, the St. Louis FC, St. Louis, or whoever it is. I want to see them have some sort of independence, and I want those teams to have a shot eventually, and this is the part of the discussion, at moving up. Possibly that they form, and this is the ideal, of course, and it's what the Cosmos are working towards, building the sort of youth program where they can develop players to make their club good enough to move up into Division I soccer in the United States. What's wrong with that idea?
Personally, I don't see a promotion relegation system for some decades. I really don't.
Well, I don't either.
I don't see it happen.
But
it won't be. It will definitely not be in the immediate future.
But it's a mental block to me, though, Brett, isn't it? I mean, what's wrong with the concept? There's nothing wrong with it. We just won't embrace it. And the owners...
It depends on which way you look at it. As a fan standpoint, I think all the fans in the U.S. are willing to accept the promotion relegation. Hell, they follow all the leagues around the world that have promotion relegation.
They're ready for it.
Yeah, it's not a foreign concept to them. The people who are not going to be okay with this are going to be the sponsors, who are going to be the owners per se. Because with MLS, teams are dropping current expansion teams are dropping about $40 million just to get into the league. Period. That's not including the soccer-specific stadium that they have to meet requirements with MLS now. That's not including a lot of expenses.
But
so that's a massive amount of money. If they're going to be relegated, owners aren't at this point in time, since we don't have that massive of soccer culture. I don't see many owners forking over the money in order to do that if they're going to be concerned about being dropped.
Then build a soccer culture in your area. I mean, listen, let's say the Seattle Sounders get relegated. You don't think that they're still going to get near 20,000 fans rooting them on to get them re-promoted back to MLS 1? I think that the crowd would be rabid, just as rabid now. And I think that's the owner's misconception of relegation. That's their misunderstanding, because relegation and promotion itself fuels fans coming out. I mean, that's what gets people in the gut, that rooting for their team. That's what makes them connected with their team. They go through the ups and downs with their team. They are, they're bought in. And that's what we're missing in some ways in soccer. And you're right, maybe it's not going to happen. But in my eyes, boy, it should, because they're missing a great opportunity here, in my eyes.
To jump back to the Sounders, do I think that they're going to, if they get relegated back to Division II, do I think they're going to continue with high numbers, say like 20,000? I do not. Strictly because the Sounders have been there for about 30 years plus?
Yeah. But they've built a culture, Brett. They've built a culture. Those people aren't going away just because the Sounders drop down to Division II. Those fans are going to come out, and they're going to make sure that team gets back to Division I. That's the whole idea. I don't
think when they're in USL, I do not. Right before they got promoted, I do not think that they broke 10,000 in attendance. Do I think if they get relegated now?
But guess what? When they didn't break 10,000 in attendance back when they were Seattle Sounders USL, the reason they didn't do it, there was no hope of promotion. So why? What's the big hurrah? No matter how good the Seattle Sounders do in USL, they're still stuck where they are, Division II. But now if you give them the opportunity to move up a level, that's a culture you're building there. That's a culture. It's not just fair weather fans, and that's what we're trying to get past in this league. We're trying to get past fair weather fans that just jump on board because, and we're seeing in Seattle, they don't care necessarily how the team is doing. Regardless of how the team's doing, those fans still come out and support the Sounders. Same thing in Toronto. Year after year after year, Toronto has sucked, and yet the fans still come out and they are competing at the top of the league for attendance once again. So what I'm saying is build the culture, and it doesn't matter. Promotion and relegation just fuels the fire of that culture. It actually creates real fans, not these pussy fans that come out to just watch, whenever their team's doing well. You see what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying. I just don't think that we're there, obviously, which is why I said that I don't see this happening within some decades.
It's not there for every team. I agree.
It's not there for a lot of teams.
It's not there for Kansas City. It's not there for FC Dallas.
It'd be much easier to say who it is there for than it is to label who it is not there for.
I agree it would be. But what I'm trying to say is the inclusion of promotion relegation might just help teams develop culture, which they don't have now. It's on a small basis. But if you're rooting your team on, you're rooting them on because they're the Cubs and the Cubs of Division II. I mean, there's a passion there that you develop for that team, an underdog sort of feeling that once they are promoted, you're going to stick behind that team. You become attached to that team. So that's all I'm saying. That's my passionate argument for promotion and relegation. And you're right, it's not going to happen because American owners don't understand, the culture that something like that can build. I may be wrong. I'm just saying I sense that would be a next step for MLS.
Here, you'd think it'd be the next step for MLS, but the problem is that we don't have outside of the owners, we don't have a stable Division II. We definitely don't have a stable Division III. The promotion and relegation might be a nice idea, but it all stems down to the teams that are there. At which point, if we have promotion relegation, you might see more Division II teams, throwing the money. Might be like, hey, we can get up there next season after that. Who knows? But right now, we don't have a stable system to promote it, at which point this brings us back to MLS working with NASL as well as USL if they can get the opportunity, even though there is bad blood there. Mm-hmm. They're not the best of friends.
Well, and that's the other thing, Brett. We don't have a stable system because the USSF, and everybody involved with American soccer, they haven't had the balls to grab the reins and say, listen, this is how it's going to work. We're all going to work together and make this happen. We're not going to have a bunch of independent leagues doing whatever they want, trying to finagle one another so one becomes less powerful and the other one becomes more powerful. That's the crap that's got to end. USSF has to provide some guidelines, so this is a stable system. That's the bottom line, and we're not getting that. It's basically a free-for-all right now. And don't you think that's a little ridiculous?
It is. I agree completely.